The little girl tried not to stare, but hunger has a way of betraying even the quietest child. The restaurant smelled like warm bread, fried chicken, and salty fries. For most people inside, it was just another casual dinner. Laughter drifted between tables, forks clinked against plates, and sunlight poured through the large windows. But at the table near the door, a small moment was quietly unfolding, one that would change several lives forever. A tired woman stood beside the table with her young daughter, clutching a few crumpled bills in her hand. Her dress was clean but worn, and her eyes carried the kind of exhaustion that came from fighting life every single day. She had already counted the money in her palm 3 times. It wasn't enough. Across the room, a single father sat with his daughter at a wooden table by the window. 2 plates sat in front of them, golden fried chicken and a mountain of crispy fries. It wasn't a fancy meal, but to them it felt like a small celebration after a long week. The father had been saving for days just to take his daughter somewhere nice, and that was when he noticed it. The woman was trying to leave quietly, but her little girl couldn't stop staring at his plate. Before the story continues, take a quick second to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. Now, back to the moment that changed everything. The little girl beside the woman looked no older than 5. Her curly blonde hair framed a face that was trying very hard to be brave. She wasn't crying, she wasn't begging, she was simply looking. Her eyes kept drifting toward the plates of food across the room. Every time she looked, she quickly glanced back at her mother, as if afraid she might be caught doing something wrong. Her tiny fingers gripped the strap of a small camera that hung around her neck, a cheap second-hand one that had probably been bought from a thrift store. The woman noticed her daughter staring and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Her expression carried a silent apology. She had promised dinner. But life had other plans. The man by the window watched the scene unfold without meaning to. At first it was just a passing glance, but something about the girl's eyes stopped him. They were wide, curious, and quietly hopeful. He knew that look. He had seen it before. Years ago, when his own life had fallen apart after losing his wife, he and his daughter had spent months barely getting by. There were nights when dinner was a single sandwich split between 2 people. Nights when he pretended he wasn't hungry so his daughter could have the last bite. Hunger leaves a mark on people, and those who have felt it never forget the look. The woman gently tugged her daughter's hand, trying to guide her toward the door. She didn't want it to cause a scene. Pride was sometimes the last thing a struggling person had left. But the little girl looked back one more time, not at the people, at the food. That was when the father slowly stood up. His daughter looked at him with curiosity as he picked up one of the plates. Without making a big announcement, without drawing attention, he simply walked across the room and stopped beside the woman. She immediately shook her head before he could even speak. Her pride was strong. Her voice was quiet but firm as she explained they were fine, that they were just leaving, that he didn't need to worry. But he had already seen the truth in the little girl's eyes. He gently placed the plate down on an empty table nearby. Then he did something unexpected. Instead of offering charity, he told the woman that his daughter had accidentally ordered too much food and they couldn't possibly finish it all. He smiled awkwardly, as if embarrassed by the situation. He asked if they could help by taking some so it wouldn't go to waste. The woman looked at him carefully. She understood what he was doing. He wasn't giving charity. He was giving dignity. Her eyes began to fill with tears she quickly tried to hide. For a moment she hesitated. Accepting help is sometimes harder than giving it. But then she looked down at her daughter. The little girl was staring at the plate like it was treasure. Slowly the woman nodded. They sat down at the nearby table. The father returned to his seat, pretending nothing unusual had happened. His own daughter watched everything quietly, absorbing the moment with the deep awareness children sometimes have. The little girl with the camera picked up a fry. She took a small bite. Her eyes widened instantly. It was the kind of simple joy only a hungry child understands. For the next few minutes, the restaurant continued buzzing with normal life. Conversations, laughter, the clatter of dishes. But at that small table, something deeply human was unfolding. The girl ate slowly, savoring every bite as if she didn't want the moment to end. The mother kept glancing toward the man and his daughter, silently thanking them without words. But the moment didn't end there. As the father watched the little girl with the camera, he noticed something else. Between bites, she occasionally lifted the camera and snapped pictures, not of people, of the food, of the sunlight hitting the table, of her mother smiling for the first time that day. Curious, the man eventually walked over again, not to interrupt but to ask about the camera. The woman explained quietly that her daughter loved photography. She took pictures of everything. Birds, flowers, streetlights, even puddles after the rain. The camera had been the girl's birthday gift from a neighbor who worked at a pawn shop. It barely worked half the time. But the girl treated it like it was the most valuable thing in the world. Photography made her happy. The father smiled as he listened, because his own daughter loved drawing. Two creative kids, two struggling families, and one unexpected moment bringing them together. After they finished eating, the woman stood up again, still holding the few crumpled bills she had earlier. She tried to hand them to the man as repayment, but he gently refused. Instead, he suggested something different. He asked if the little girl could take a photo of him and his daughter. Her face lit up instantly. She adjusted the camera with serious concentration, stepped back, and carefully framed the shot. Click. The photo captured a simple moment, a father and daughter sitting together at a small restaurant table, smiling under warm afternoon light. The girl looked proud. For her, that photo was worth more than money. But the story didn't end there. The restaurant manager had quietly watched everything from the counter. He had seen the hesitation, the kindness, the dignity, and the small moment of humanity that most people would have missed. When the father walked up to pay the bill, the manager shook his head. The meal had already been taken care of. Someone else had paid for it. A customer who had witnessed the moment from another table simply smiled and left before anyone could thank them. Kindness, it seemed, had started spreading around the room. The woman and her daughter eventually prepared to leave. Before they did, the little girl walked over one last time and handed the father something, a small printed photograph. Somehow, despite the camera being old and unreliable, it had produced a tiny instant photo. The picture showed the plate of fries, golden, warm, glowing in the sunlight. On the back, written in careful, childish handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for the best dinner ever." The father folded the photo gently and placed it in his wallet. He carried it for years, not because it was a picture of food, but because it was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts can become the biggest moments in someone else's life. And years later, when that little girl grew up and became a professional photographer whose work touched millions of people around the world, she would often tell the story of the day a stranger noticed her staring at a plate of fries. A day when kindness arrived quietly, in the middle of an ordinary restaurant. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. If this moment touched your heart, write the word of kindness in the comments. It helps remind everyone reading that small acts of compassion still exist in this world, because sometimes a simple plate of food can change a life. And if this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to the channel so more people can hear stories that remind us who we truly are. Because kindness is never wasted. Sometimes it's simply waiting for someone brave enough to notice a little girl staring at a plate. The photograph stayed in the father's wallet for years. At first, he kept it simply because it reminded him of a good day. Life had not been easy for him since losing his wife. Every morning felt like climbing a mountain while carrying the weight of two lives on his shoulders. His daughter depended on him for everything. Love, stability, protection, hope. And sometimes when the nights were quiet and the house felt too empty, he wondered if he was doing enough. But every time he opened his wallet and saw that tiny photograph of fries glowing in the sunlight, something inside him softened. It reminded him that kindness still existed, that small moments mattered, and that even when life felt heavy, a single act could ripple far beyond what anyone imagined. In the weeks after that day at the restaurant, life returned to its usual rhythm. Work, school, groceries, bills. The father worked long hours repairing electrical systems across the city, often coming home tired but determined to give his daughter a better life. His daughter, Emily, sometimes asked about the little girl with the camera. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she lived. But he remembered her eyes. and the quiet joy she felt when she held that camera. Years passed. Emily grew taller, her drawings became more detailed, and the world slowly shifted around them. The restaurant where everything had happened eventually closed and turned into a small bookstore. New buildings appeared, old neighborhoods changed. The father almost forgot the exact details of that afternoon, but he never forgot the feeling. Then one evening, nearly 15 years later, something unexpected happened. Emily, now a college student studying art, rushed into the living room holding her laptop with excitement shining in her eyes. She told her father there was a photographer she had been following online, a rising star whose work had been featured in magazines, art galleries, and international exhibitions. Her photographs were famous for capturing simple human moments, children laughing in sunlight, strangers sharing quiet kindness, small scenes that told powerful stories. Emily admired her deeply, but what caught her father's attention was the photographer's latest post. Not of landscapes, not of cities, but of a plate of fries sitting on a wooden table, glowing in the warm afternoon light. His heart skipped. The image looked almost identical to the tiny photograph still hidden in his wallet. Below the image was a long caption. The photographer wrote about the day that changed her life. She explained that when she was 5 years old, she and her mother had walked into a restaurant with barely enough money to buy a drink. Her mother had been struggling to find work after losing everything during a difficult time in their lives. That afternoon, hunger had followed them into the restaurant, and just when they were about to leave quietly, a stranger noticed her staring at his plate of food. Instead of offering pity, he gave them dignity. Instead of making them feel small, he made them feel welcome. The photographer wrote that it was the first time she realized how powerful kindness could be. It was also the day she decided she wanted to spend her life capturing moments that reminded people of their humanity. At the bottom of the caption, she added something unexpected. She said she had searched for that man for years. She never learned his name. She never saw him again. But she kept the memory alive through her photographs. Emily slowly looked at her father. His hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his wallet. He opened it carefully. Inside was the small, faded photograph the little girl had given him all those years ago. The same plate of fries. The same sunlight. The same moment. Emily stared at him in disbelief. Her voice trembled as she asked the question, Dad, was that you? He nodded slowly. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. It felt surreal. Somewhere in the world, a little girl he had helped with a simple plate of food had grown into someone inspiring millions. Emily quickly typed a comment under the photographer's post. She shared the photo from her father's wallet, and she wrote only one sentence. I think you've been looking for my dad. For several hours, nothing happened. Then suddenly the photographer replied. The response was short, but emotional. She said she never expected to find him, and she asked if they could meet. A week later, they sat together in a quiet cafe. The photographer walked in slowly, holding a camera in her hands. She was no longer the small girl from the restaurant, but her eyes were the same. The moment she saw the father, tears filled her eyes instantly. They didn't need introductions. They both recognized the moment that had connected them years earlier. She explained how that afternoon had shaped her entire life. It had shown her that the world wasn't only made of struggle and hardship. It was also filled with strangers capable of incredible kindness. That belief had guided her photography. Every image she captured tried to recreate that same feeling. The father listened quietly. He had never imagined his small action carried such weight. To him, it had simply felt like the right thing to do. But sometimes the right thing becomes something much bigger. Before leaving the cafe, the photographer asked if she could take one more picture. This time it wasn't of food. It was of the father and Emily sitting together, just like the first photograph. Only now, years later. Click. The photo captured two people who had unknowingly changed someone's life. That photograph later appeared in one of the most famous exhibitions of her career. Under the image was a title, The Moment Kindness Noticed, and beneath it, a small note. I dedicated to the stranger who saw a hungry child and chose compassion. Before we finish this story, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this story moved you even a little, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes kindness still exists, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep spreading stories that remind people of the good in this world. And one more special request. Before you leave, write the word hope in the comments if you believe even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's future. Because sometimes a simple plate of fries, a quiet moment, and a stranger who chooses to care can shape an entire life.